In 1957, after a long dispute between Brooklyn Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley and New York planner Robert Moses, the Dodgers and the New York Giants baseball teams left the city for California. The National League then awarded New York a new expansion team named after the 19th century New York Metropolitans, who would begin playing in 1962 and then moved into Moses Shea Stadium in Queens 2 years later. After 50-plus years, they've won 2 World Series titles and 5 NL pennants, but they've never fully escaped the shadow of that other team playing in New York. So what's it like being a New York Mets fan? Let's find out. This is Thrill of Defeat. So we're here with David Roth, who's an editor for the website Defector, an excellent sports and culture site. And Sean O'Connor is a comedian. He wrote for the show Solar Opposites. He wrote for Norm Macdonald Live. And he currently does his own podcast called Off the Records, where he listens to old comedy records that are sometimes funny and sometimes...
And also sometimes very, very offensive. I would say more times than not offensive.
You've unearthed one classic and then 100 reminders of how incredibly racist everyone was in 1974.
Yeah, we were very excited. We bought this like party record from 1973 that was released on Laugh Records, which is like the Red Fox label, and it was called Funky and Filthy. And honestly, it was the filthiest thing I've ever heard. It was like an hour of us apologizing because it was a ventriloquist act where the ventriloquist was saying that he was a pedophile, and then the puppet was agreeing with him.
It was like he's got his hand up my ass right now. Was that the bit?
No, it was about they were talking about having sex with a 13-year-old, and they were just in agreement that it ruled.
That's great.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, we're about to talk about the Mets being annoying with 2 Mets fans. So this could get even more filthy. We have no idea what offensive slurs we're about to uncover over the course of this.
It's gonna get funky and filthy.
I can't guarantee the funky part. So today we're talking about the New York Mets, a team that on paper has had a very good history. By and large, they're usually competitive. They got a couple World Series, but there's just something about them that inspires like pain and anger and jokes about them on a level that seems disproportionate to them being a decent team. David and Sean, where are you guys from, and what are some of your earliest memories of rooting for the Mets and becoming a Mets fan in your childhood?
To me, I was Mets fandom was thrust upon me, like I was forced into it. I am from New Jersey. My whole family is from Brooklyn and the Bronx, but they were all Brooklyn Dodgers fans, and then they were betrayed by the Dodgers, and then they were like, just kind of men without a home. And then the Mets came, and like then my uncle, who was like a father figure to me, forced me into the Mets in like 1987 when I was 2 years old. Let's Go Mets was my first words, according to my parents, but I feel like they're lying. So they've been a near constant in my life. I got really, really into them during the Anthony Young year.
Oh, yeah. That's all right. That's perverted of you.
Yeah, it is.
The Anthony Young year, Dan, is when a guy set the record for the most consecutive losses in a baseball career.
All right.
Yeah. So
and that was like, when I came into consciousness, this is the team that I decide like that I've been, and I'm like, all right, cool. And I think that's why I like losing. I think it teaches you valuable lessons in life.
It's not
I agree.
Similar. The difference in age between me and Sean means that my answer, while very similar, because I also grew up in New Jersey, also a family of people that had been Brooklyn Dodgers fans and then were, abandoned and more or less, like fell into the Mets because it was not like part of our values to cheer for the Yankees. Like it just wasn't an option. The difference is that as somebody who is older, I was 8 years old when the Mets won the World Series in 1986. And for me, I was like, it's going to be like this forever. Like, there's no way that I could ever be hurt by this baseball team full of loving, happy ruffians out there winning like 107 games. And then Yeah, 87, great time to begin getting disillusioned about the Mets. If you're two, I imagine it's more or just like you're just seeing colors. Like it's not
See,
really like an issue.
yeah, no, I had like a little Gary Carter like satin jacket that I
Fantastic. Yeah,
still
it
love
was
him dearly.
Starter Junior. I was also
Yeah.
on that on that installment plan, getting just merch on merch as a young fellow. But I thought it was, gonna be good. And I don't think that my parents really, I mean, they had been alive for the previous Mets World Series. And like you said, Dan, it's like there were some really bad years in between when they won in 69, they went back in 73. And then it was just like they sucked for like 15 years, but it was like kind of funny when they did it. Like it wasn't everything sort of sucked at the time. Like I don't think the Mets really stood out, as a New York institution that was uniquely bad. And so
Mhm.
my parents, you arguably could have been like, listen, kid, like there's a chance this is as good as it's ever going to get for you. Like me waking you up in the middle of the night while you come out in your footy pajamas and watch Ray Knight score the whatever winning run in game 6. Like this could be it. Like you're probably going to get married or, do something in your life, but they did not. And then it was just from there watching that team get taken apart. I think, again, to Sean's point about this being kind of like a valuable experience for me, it's like, I don't know that I got a whole lot from the losing, but seeing a bunch of like obviously on their face mediocre owners and executives fucking up my stuff, like just taking things that I cared about and making them worse. I think I was like absorbing a politics before I knew that I was absorbing a politics. And so it's like I was like radicalized by the Wilpon family before I knew that, what anything was.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like the thing that led me down the socialist path was the years of the Wilpon family.
Yeah.
Like it's mostly in reaction to them, as well as I had cousins who were Yankee fans, and I really resented them my entire life.
Yeah.
And yeah, those two things have made me very much against Republicans and billionaires.
Yep. And that's, I think, the Yankees as the sort of like other brand in the tri-state area too, that like the Mets have been, repellent at a lot of times during, I mean, they've had some real shithead guys on the team and like the owners have been bad and stuff, but the Yankees have always had this kind of like, and this is like hack maybe to point out, but it's like, they're Trumpy. The aesthetics are Trumpy. It's just like gilded, like fake marble. They used to have like a commercial that they would show during games for season ticket packages that had like French horn music, like just fake Hondel to sell your season ticket package. It's like, fucking get over it. Like,
Specific thing to get bothered by.
Yeah. And so the Mets were always like by default, like just felt a little bit more normal, just in the sense that they had the normal tri-state area jankiness thing going on, and they weren't pretending to be like wall-to-wall carpet, like pure luxury, like just that.
It does make a world of difference because I think when you would go to like Met games, you would actually see like, their fans have bizarre personas, like you have Pin Man and like
there's no way that Cowboy Man would be able to get into the Yankee game. That's not
exactly
Freddie
like,
says doesn't count.
Yes, it's like somebody putting a Yankee jersey over like a like Brooks Brothers shirt.
Yep.
And I'm like, I just don't like that. I really loved going to games as a kid because I was obsessed with Ed Koch as a child, and there were so many men at Mets
as most
games
kids are.
Yeah.
that look like Ed Koch.
Yes.
And to me, that and it honestly made me feel at home.
Yeah, it's funny. Also, like you're not Jewish, and yet like there's a part of me that like I think that there was something about going to Mets games where I was like, it felt more like my type of people were there, which is to say, Jewish people, but then also like the Ed Koch aesthetic. I had never thought of that as there being like guys that were dressing and styling themselves Kochcore at Mets games, but I think there kind of was a little bit of that going on.
There, it was Kochcore. I mean, I have vivid memories. I mean, their hair was a bit more unkempt, but I mean, like the tweed jacket and like a tweed hat. And then, like, they had, like, the radio, like,
got out
transistor radio. And it just smelled like stale beer. And it's just, like, all of my earliest memories are Shea Stadium and those guys.
It's so great.
I want to
like,
become one.
Guys that look like they worked in the control room in the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. All those guys are fucking Mets fans. Without exception. Can I tell briefly I have a very brief Ed Koch story.
Yeah,
It's not even
sure,
really a
of course.
story. It's just, and near the end of his life, I was at Second Avenue Deli on the Upper East Side with my dad. He used to love to like sneak in. Like he would literally be going to the doctor at a hospital nearby and then be like, "Do you want to get some pastrami with me?" And just be really thirsty for the next 2 days. And obviously, like you say yes to that. We went there. We saw Ed Koch at Second Avenue Deli, which is the place to see Ed Koch, as far as I'm concerned. My dad said something to him like, Mr. Mayor, it's great to see you. He was like 90. He was very tall. Ed Koch was taller than you'd think. And the way that he responded to my dad saying something like, "Mr. Mayor, it's good to see you," was Ed Koch going, "How's your food? What did you get?" And then we had to be like, he gets the corned beef and I get the pastrami. And he's like, great work. Terrific. Enjoy it. Like, getting asked, "How's your sandwich?" by Ed Koch at Second Avenue Deli is peak for me. Big moment.
I mean, that all does kind of answer the question in a weird way. I was like, this is getting absurd, but like the whole like aesthetic you're trying so hard to describe does kind of speak to something. As a child, you immediately have this childhood memory of something you can't quite put into words, but you feel it.
There's also something kind of I'll also add this, that I think there's something wholesome-ish about the Mets, not fully wholesome, but that like my friends growing up in North Jersey were all Yankee fans. And I went to a lot of Yankees games with them. And then especially in high school, it was still like at the old stadium, it was like $7 to get into the bleachers. It was cheaper than going to the movies. And it was like, I was scared out there. Like I had never seen people like acting like that, or like, I mean, I'd seen people like be fucked up, but not like fucked up like that. And this was obviously a much milder version of what the bleachers were like in the 70s and 80s, when I think it really was like people were like bringing knives in and stuff. Like it was like fucked up, but that was New York in that era. I just remember being like, this isn't fun. Like these guys are like drunk in a way that like just makes me not want to be around them.
Just each themed gang from the Warriors in a different section.
Right.
Yeah. No. I remember going to old Yankee Stadium with my cousins because they were playing the Mariners, and I was like a huge Ken Griffey guy.
Nice.
And I wore a Mets hat because I refused to wear anything with the Yankees thing. And I was probably 11 years old. And a Yankee fan in the bleachers got up in my face and called me the F word.
Yeah.
And I was 11.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that all scans perfectly. Like, I remember Yankees bleachers guys having a song that they would sing to bother the right fielder that was called "At the Gangbang." It was like the worst collection of people that you could imagine.
Sean's reviewing their record on his podcast next week.
I was going to say, like, some of it does not hold up.
Yeah. So I feel like the first question most people probably have for you as Mets fans, that I probably have for you as Mets fans, is like, how does one become a Mets fan and not a Yankees fan? I'm sure you've been asked that a million times from outside people. Is there any actual line that gets drawn, or is it just a collection of random, my family did this, I lived here kind of thing? Can you explain some of that?
Some of it's geographic, although I don't know where in Jersey you're from, Sean, but where I was, I know like Long Island, I think of as being Mets. And then I think of like, Westchester as being Yankees. And I feel like New Jersey's kind of a toss up, but I think of the area where I was Yankees fans, but I can't be like, that's because it was Catholic. Like there's not like some sectarian division that I can think of.
No, and we have like a pretty even split. I'm from the shore, like Monmouth County, Middletown, Keensburg area, and like, yeah, it was pretty split. It seemed like if you lived in a wealthier area, you were a Yankee fan, and I was from Keensburg, which had the nickname of Sleazeburg. It's really janky,
Roasted.
And there was a lot of Met fans there.
The town I was from was like kind of just like upscale-ish New York bedroom community thing. And so I think that, but it was all, expats from New York City, basically, that like everybody, and I think it still is that way. One of my friends growing up now lives in the house next door to the house he grew up in. And it's like all the people that he's friendly with are basically like, if my wife and I had kids, like it's just people that were like, had a good time in New York. Then they like moved there because the schools are nice and there's a lot of lawn. I don't know that necessarily like creates Yankees fans, but I do feel like something about, I don't know, high property taxes, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that? But to your question about like how do you choose it or whatever, I mean, there were fandoms that I chose in my life, seemingly like if you just go on the merits, like seemingly just to make it more difficult for myself to be happy. Like picking the New Jersey Nets. And I went to school in LA and I picked the Clippers. Like I had a chance to just start all over again and was like, no, it's Loy Vaught. Let's do that instead. But like the Mets, I don't really think of myself as having picked them. And I think that given just the accident of my age, if I had been like picking a team as an 8-year-old just based on what was making me happy, like I had the craziest, best Mets team that I'm probably ever going to see like right there in front of me.
See, that's great. I feel like I did not have a choice there. I feel like I inherited the Mets.
Yeah.
It was like part of
more or less.
Yeah. But also there's something about the fact that I inherited it that it feels more ingrained in who I am, where like in the 90s, I definitely got to pick my favorite basketball team, like, cause like my family was not talking about that. So I was like really all in on the Magic because I loved Penny Hardaway and like, as soon as Shaq and Penny were gone, I lost all interest in the Magic, and then I felt homeless since then. Although when I moved to LA, I did pick the Clippers, and also felt like that was a huge mistake.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, but it's also like, what else are you gonna do? Like once you've like been sort of steeped in the Mets Yankees binary, the idea of going out there and just being like, I'm a Mets fan and a Lakers fan, like I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you square that with yourself.
No,
that makes sense.
Oh, I was just gonna say to answer your question. Yeah, I just feel like it's just part of me at this point, and I would remove it if I could Eternal Sunshine.
Finally get that technology, and that's what you use it for.
Just very specifically, I don't want to remember a single fucking thing about Steve Traxel, Victor Zambrano, or Jason Vargas. The rest of it I'll keep. It's just there's 3 guys who I watched start at Citi Field or Shea Stadium 30 times that I just want all those games gone.
The only foul ball I ever caught was off Steve Traxel.
Really?
And he was on the Cubs. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, honestly, he was like very good as a Met, but it took forever. He was a sourpuss. Like I mean, I'm glad that you got a ball there, but that's
rough language from Bleachers Dave here.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, he did have like the cool person.
Mini.
I love guys with the personalities. Like I think there was a time in my life where if I had to die so Turk Wendell lived, I would have.
Yeah, and it was all based on just like, I'm sure that like if you knew what Turk Wendell thought about like the world, it would scandalize you. But for me, I remember as a kid just being like, that guy brushes his teeth between innings. You ever even heard of that shit? That's crazy.
He's also the guy who wore 99 and had his contract made out for, it was like $1 less than the even million, so it was like 999 like in 99 cents.
Oh, he's so quirky.
Oh, relievers.
Yep.
So quirky. And then they get mad and you're like, I hate this quirky motherfucker. It's like, you shave your mustache. We're not playing your intro song. You're stupid. You suck this season. Yeah. So let's get into, like you said, the speaking of personality, I feel like a lot of Mets fans, they're the highlight of their rooting lives was that 86 World Series team. The Mets, a lot of people may not know, they did win the World Series in 1969, like less than a decade after they came into existence, which is kind of impressive for an expansion team. But when most people think of like Mets heyday, it's that 86 World Series, which has spawned a million documentaries, the Once Upon a Time in Queens, the Doc and Dwight 30 for 30. What is your guys' either memories at the time of that series, and what's like kind of the lasting legacy of those guys, Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden, and what that has meant for the Mets in your existence?
I mean, I remember them as they were like my heroes because I was a child. And still, I still actually am trying to be more like Keith Hernandez in everything that I do. But this was like another maybe sort of formative experience, was like they broke the team up starting, really basically the next year, trading Kevin Mitchell and trading Lenny Dykstra. And those guys were guys that, as again, because I was small, because I was 8, I don't even think I was like a below average size 8-year-old. I was just like, Lenny Dykstra is the shortest guy on that team. I would also be the shortest guy on that team. I'm kind of a Lenny Dykstra type. Yeah. And then just the next few decades, Dykstra being an especially pointed example, we're just like finding out how odious basically every person on that team was, like how just like personally lousy a guy. I don't know why I'm using so many like Edward G. Robinson locutions here. I said lousy and sourpuss the first 5 minutes of the show.
It's like we used the F word like 8 times already on this podcast, and now you're like, ooh, man, I don't want to get
tie this down
explicit.
a little bit. Yeah. I'm trying to set a tone here. I don't want anybody if I hear any more profanity during this, I will leave the call.
The last segment on this, Sean and I are going to put on some puppets, and you're not going to like what they have to say.
Their views may shock and surprise you. The Dykstra, though, was like a guy that was like, on steroids, like it just became a prolific financial criminal. Like a lot of these guys wound up being, I guess, like they're just degenerates, I guess, like even by ball player standards. And so if you like, Sean, if you have any recollection of them, was it like Bad Guys 1 or like people in your family telling you how disgusting they were?
Well, yeah, it was Bad Guys 1. My terrible uncle, who, like, I should say he's terrible. He's a nice man, but he is he has more in common with Lenny Dykstra than he does with me. And like but like I remember there was a VHS of the 1986, like the team yearbook VHS, and I would play that over and over with like Hot Foot and like all that stuff. So the
Wild Boys montage with Backman and Lenny Dykstra stealing bases and sliding around and stuff.
Yeah, you belong to the city. Like it's giving me goosebumps just talking about it. But like that is my real relationship to the 1986 team, because I was 1, and so I've just watched that VHS like 300 times.
Yeah, and you can go back and there's some more to it. Like a lot of these guys were just straight dirtbags and have like kind of stayed screwing up, because they have like addiction problems and stuff. Like it's not like the sort of thing where you can say like Dwight Gooden's a bad guy or Darryl Strawberry. Like they had a lot of stuff going on in their lives, and they were young people with a lot of money in an era where people were doing cocaine all the time, and it fucked them up.
It literally was they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like they were in this, and they were massive stars, and like the exact time where New York was the center of the universe again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they were the 2 biggest guys. Like I do not fault them at all for at least dabbling in it.
Yeah. And they became, I mean, a lot of the guys from that team have sort of like stayed around the organization in various ways. And the broadcast team is Gary Cohen, who's like a lifelong Mets fan, is the, play-by-play guy. And then the 2 color analysts are Ron Darling, who was the number 2 starter on the 86 World Series team, and Keith Hernandez, who was their first baseman and was my first favorite baseball player. Mm-hmm. And they were both really like intense, cerebral guys who I think also like partied in ways that would kill most people. And I just, at the time, I was like projecting all I knew was that like they tried really hard and that they won a lot. And then like, so later on in life, finding out that, and again, that this is applicable all up and down the culture and in every experience in your life, that your heroes are actually like on drugs or just weird guys is,
Yeah, the Bad Guys 1 was a rough read for me. Like just because, although my guy Gary Carter comes off looking like a little angel.
Yep, he was one of the very few guys. So at one point, Jeff Pearlman, who wrote that book, also wrote like Winning Time and stuff. He sort of excels at this type of story. Like basically lists the guys on the Mets that weren't disgusting, and it was like Gary Carter, Mookie Wilson, Ed Hearn. That's it. Like everybody else on the team, there was a group of dudes on that. This was again something that you learn. I'm glad I learned this later in life, that called themselves the Scum Bunch. And it was like Jesse Orozco and Danny Heap. And they were just like cartoon children. Like they would apparently they would drink a lot on the team playing and stuff, but also they were just like flick boogers at each other. Like they were just like gross, like cavemen.
In Succession, wasn't there? They were the Disgusting Brothers or something.
The Disgusting Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, this is like more exaggerated than the joke from the show. Basically,
it's far more. It's far more disgusting. The Scum Brothers.
Scum Bunch. At least the Disgusting Brothers were just out there they were just having sex with a bunch of people that probably had a bad time having sex with them, whereas like the Scum Bunch probably was doing that too, but then they were also just like, when one of them passed out, they were like, I'm gonna put one of my boogers in his nose.
Oh god.
That's gonna be my thing.
It was the era of Big Wall Street, cocaine, and the Garbage Pail Kids.
They really were. They were like IRL adult Garbage Pail Kids.
So as we moved into the 90s, I mean, the Mets, they won in 86. They were pretty good for the rest of the 80s, but never went back to the World Series. And in the 90s, they're kind of a middling team, on and off good. But in the mid 90s, Darryl Strawberry goes to the Yankees. And so does David Cohn, and so does Dwight Gooden. So what was it like as a Mets fan watching the 96 Yankees win the World Series, followed by, 98, 99, 2000? We'll get into 2000 separately.
The 90s were hell as a whole. I mean, because not only that, you had the Braves just like,
oh yeah,
rolling through the NL East. But like, yeah, I mean, the Yankees winning was really hard. It ruined so many, countless Halloween parties for me in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because no matter what, it would always be playing. And I hated Derek Jeter. But then, like, it wasn't even just the World Series. Like, when Dwight Gooden threw the no-hitter, like, it really hurt my feelings. It felt like he stabbed the Mets in the back, because the Mets had not had a no-hitter at the time.
Like, he didn't have a no-hitter until like, it was 2012 or something terrible like that. Like, it was the first 50 odd years of the franchise. There wasn't that. And then as soon as Gooden gets to the Yankees, he's like sort of cooked at that point. He's been through a lot, arm trouble, addiction stuff. Instantly just like whirls a perfect game. Or it was a perfect game. It was a no-hitter. But it was the sort of thing where you're just like, come on, man. Like, this is not like I accepted that he wasn't going to do it for the Mets. I figured, honestly, until it happened, that no one would ever do it for the Mets. But watching all of those guys instantly go over there and like not just succeed, but like get their lives together. That was, I remember, like, I think at this point, like, Strawberry is sort of like back in the fold with the Mets. Gooden has always been a guy that the team has sort of like brought to spring training to do like special instruction and stuff like that. But for a long period of time, when the Wilpons were the owners of the Mets, which is basically from 2002 to 2021, they sort of like froze out everybody that had been like a part of those teams, except for Keith, who they continued to employ. And so, like, I think that Gooden and Strawberry would have like basically told you that they thought of themselves as Yankees more than Mets for a lot of the 1990s, not just because they had played there, but because like the Mets didn't really seem to want anything to do with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a home. They really did like kind of adopt Strawberry, Gooden, and absolutely David Cohn. Like,
yeah, Cohn is basically just a Yankee in the public imagination now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he couldn't have been more of a 1980s Met. He was masturbating in the bullpen.
Yep.
Like, what?
Yeah. Well, look, Dan, I'm sensing that there's judgment in your tone about that.
No, I just hadn't heard. I don't think I'd heard that story.
Yeah, no, he did do that. There's a whole. I think that's also like in the book that Roger Angell, like the sainted, like nonagenarian Don of American sports writing, wrote about David Cohn. He had to like cover that story. We were like, what was going on there? Which I think is worse than like actually getting in trouble for it. Is like sitting down across from Roger Angell and being like, sometimes you gotta like jack off if you want to be normal because you're stressed out at work. Like, that was just kind of what I think happened there.
One of those old sports writers who's like, I'm trying to write about Greek mythology in your intro paragraph, and now I got to come jacking off.
Well, but again, that is like the fact that he became enough of a Yankee that's like now a footnote. If he'd stayed with the Mets, that would have been like, basically he would have been remembered as a guy that like had a bunch of really good seasons. He won 19 games one time. Also jacked his dick off in the bullpen. That happened.
Yeah, if he was a lifelong Met, that's way earlier in his Wikipedia page.
Yep, it's basically in the first sentence.
Mentally noting that for the jacked
professional baseball player masturbator.
Mentally noting that for the jacked off column in Immaculate Grid.
Yeah, it can be difficult.
Mets jacked off. Like, it's probably gonna be David Cohn, but I can't think of anyone else. I'll go with the high
not
percent.
A very good rarity score, but at least you're right.
Yeah. Well, Jose Lean, the ex-Pirate, got caught driving without pants once. So
Yep. And I believe
that would
Reese
be my answer.
McGuire, who was also a Pirate, got caught jacking
Oh,
off
yeah.
outside of it was
the
a
Blue
funny-
Jays Stadium, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah, the Rogers Center.
Yeah, it was someplace. I was gonna say it was someplace funny. It was either like a Tim Hortons or it was like literally outside work.
These guys are jacking off a lot. Whatever. Whatever puts you in the right frame of mind. I'm not a ball player. I know these are intense, competitive guys.
It's a mental game.
Yeah.
You need to be 100% present.
So in the late 90s, as the Yankees are going on their run, the Mets got good again. What was your memory of the Mike Piazza trade? Mike Piazza, if people don't remember, was traded from the Dodgers, had a dispute with the Dodgers owners, got traded from the Dodgers to the Marlins, and then immediately from the Marlins to the Mets within a couple days, and became their star catcher as they kind of reascended in the late 90s and made the World Series in 2000, which we will also talk about.
This reflects most of the things that are wrong with me as a person. I have hated every good trade that every team that I've cared about has ever made. I didn't like the Stephon Marbury for Jason Kidd trade. I was like, Kidd can't do the stuff that Marbury could do. He's stuck. So I've been
when you have a mad take, you adopt that affectation. That's David's real voice, actually.
That
He's
is my
putting on a fake voice the entire rest of the podcast.
White knuckling it, not to be doing this whole thing. Like Jerome from Queens calling into Steve Summers overnight.
Do you understand that reference, Dan?
No.
There is a guy.
Yeah, Jerome from Queens is Jerry Seinfeld, and he calls when Steve Summers would be hosting his show on The Fan. Jerome from Queens would call in, and it was, if you don't know Steve Summers, go on YouTube and watch him. He is, I think, the greatest broadcaster.
Did he do a voice, or did he do it as Jerry Seinfeld?
No, he just call in as Jerry Seinfeld.
Just call in and talk
Hey, it's Jerome from Queens,
yeah,
the most famous person on television right now. Yeah,
and he would just go, and it was a pretty nuts and boltsy. Like, it was not. Seinfeld doesn't give a lot of shit away for free. Like, he wasn't trying to be funny. He wanted to talk about the Mets.
He really did. Like, he's basically humorless when he talks about the Mets.
Yep.
I respect that.
Steve Summers is an American original. I, again, want to just second Sean's. He's like the last of a certain type of radio guy, like faintly jazz coded. Like, he always had the overnight shift at WFAN, which is the New York sports talk radio show.
Like, when I first started comedy, I would be commuting to New York to do like open mics, and then I'd be driving back to my parents' house in New Jersey. And Steve Summers was my co-pilot. I listened to him every single night. I was obsessed with him. Like, I when you see a picture of him, his face doesn't match his voice, but it feels right no matter what.
Yep. It's that radio guy thing where his body is much smaller than his voice.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a normal sized guy, but yeah, he's like an outsized figure for sure. All right, what was I talking about here?
You're saying you hated the Piazza trade. Yeah.
I didn't actually. This is the one exception to that rule. That, like, at the time, I think I was kind of like at a lower ebb as a fan. I was in college when that happened, and so I was like, I had other stuff going on. I was being cool. I was into cool guy shit.
I'm drinking part of a 40.
Yeah, I would part of it that was like taped to my hand, and then be like, "I need you guys to take me to the hospital right now."
Did the Mets win? Yeah,
those teams got good really quickly, and they were good in a way that I could sort of like ethically rock with. Like, it wasn't the sort of thing where it didn't feel Yankees-ish to me. The Piazza thing was basically, I mean, it's like taking a lollipop from a small child, like the Marlins being the child in this scenario. But it's like, you can still do it. Like, it's the child is bad in this. Like, it's a naughty child.
I like you clearly messed up your metaphor halfway through and tried to power through it.
Yeah,
it wasn't ethically wrong. It was like taking a lollipop from a child.
But from a lousy,
the child
from the Omen or something. I'm trying to fix. It's like taking a child from what's it? The doll Annabelle or whatever it is.
If they had the lollipop was the key that was going to open up the gate to hell, so I'm saving the world by taking it from the kid. This analogy makes sense. I'm not going to go back and correct it.
I'm going to try it again. It's like taking the little puzzle box from Pinhead in Hellraiser, if that helps at all. The Lament configuration.
Sure.
I don't think that works.
Yeah.
Marlon's general manager,
it's all right.
Pinhead.
I'll stick with the lollipop and the child. But I think that, like, those teams were fun. They had a lot of, like, kind of goofy, homegrown-y type guys. And then they just made a bunch of good baseball team moves. Like that was a very likable group of, I think like maybe the current team excluded, like I'll need to see more there. But I think that those like best infield ever, there was like a Sports Illustrated cover. It was like Robin Ventura and Edgardo Alfonso and John Olerud, like Ray Ordonez, who is this Cuban shortstop, couldn't hit at all, but was a great fielder. That shit rocked.
Like
those teams were
the worst hitter ever, but I was obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And like me and my friends, when we play like sandlot ball, we were all just trying to make like weird diving catches.
Yep.
Like just destroying our bones.
I was gonna say, like he would do stuff that like normal people are not physically like cut out. Like if I tried to do like at a 0% speed, a version of one of his like sort of like weird sliding pop up and throw things, like my torso would just like detach from my body. I would fall apart like a Jenga tower. Like it's just not, you have to be Ray Ordonez to do that shit. But it was like kind of an interestingly put together group of really good baseball players. And they were not obviously sociopathic in the way that or at least, revealed to be obviously sociopathic.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Fonzie and Olerud are more in the neutral good category.
Yes, they are. They would be they'd be hanging out with Ed Hearn, Gary Carter, Mookie Wilson, and no one else on the 86 Mets team.
Yeah. But Rob Ventura, I think he might be chaotic evil.
Yep, which is fine. You need some of that. Like, and then Piazza himself was like really just like a cool baseball player. Like an interesting story in terms of where he was drafted and, like having a much better career than anybody sort of expected. But mostly I think was just like very clearly a star in a way that, for all of the big players that the Mets had brought in the intervening period since the World Series, they'd never had anybody that like could command the spotlight in the way that Piazza could.
He was cool. He had a cool, like his jersey sleeves were like cut in an interesting way.
Yep.
He loved Pantera, which I just had never seen a baseball player like talking about a current band.
Yeah.
So, and even that wasn't very current in 1999.
It wasn't, but again, you grade these things on a curve. Like if it was the sort of thing where like I can only cheer for a guy that has the same opinions about me in terms of like top 5 Mogwai albums, go. I don't like Francisco Lindor and I are going to disagree to a certain extent on Mogwai's mid period, but that's fine. I'm all right with it.
Mike Piazza. I saw Pantera in 2000, I think. So I wonder if Mike Piazza was there. It was in Pittsburgh, probably.
There's an interview with him that just came out today in New York Magazine. He just like lives in Milan now.
Cool.
He speaks Italian and like he's been like spending more time over there since he retired. I sense that his politics are super lousy, even by baseball player standards. But at the same time, making a bunch of money and then just fucking off to go live in a beautiful apartment in Milan is like, that's how you're supposed to do it. Like, I don't have to agree with him on like the income tax. Like that's another admirable move from Big Mike.
Yeah, he also went into the Hall of Fame as a Met. I didn't realize that, even though the Dodgers, gave him a shot. I think he really had a falling out with the Dodgers and really liked his time in New York.
But the very rare moments in history where the Dodgers demonstrably had a shittier ownership situation than the Mets.
Yeah.
And they took advantage of it.
So the peak of the Piazza era was the 2000 Subway Series. The Yankees and Mets meet in the World Series, the Yankees winning in 96, 98, 99, now going up against the Mets in 2000. What's your memory of the 2000 Subway Series? Like specific frustrations? Did you think the Mets were going to win? How did you react? Like, take us back to that.
I mean, truly, I will say, I think I'm the only person in the Mets fandom that their heart broke in June of that year or July, like when they traded Melvin Mora. I was like so into Melvin Mora. He was my favorite player on the team. And I was at the game with my friend Chris White, and it popped up that the trade happened. And I was so mad that I like pouted the entire time the game was played. And I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever. So when they made the World Series, I was kind of already pissed off at the Mets.
But you really wish you had Melvin Mora out there right now. Honestly, also, to point this out, I don't know how hardcore the people listening to this. Sean's been vindicated by history. Melvin Mora had an awesome career, and almost all of the good things that happened in it happened after the Mets dumped him for nothing.
Who did they get back?
It was Mike Bordick.
Mike Bordick. Oh, all right. I guess they felt like they
career
needed
shortstop, right?
Mike Bordick at the time.
Yeah.
But they already had Ordonez.
Ordonez was hurt.
No, the trades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
The trade sucked. Melvin Moore could have played short.
Yeah, he was a shortstop who wasn't like 36 or whatever. I don't know how old Bordick
so they
was.
traded for Bordick, and then Bordick got hurt. And so they in the World Series, as I recall, it was like Kurt Abbott was playing shortstop for them, like just like freely available, like a guy that would like see a baseball player version of like a couch on the curb that says like no bed bugs. Like that was more or less like who they were running out there. Yeah, so I didn't think they were gonna win that World Series, but I love that team, man. That was a real happy time for me. I didn't appreciate Mike Bordick enough. I remember driving up to my girlfriend's place in Putnam County, New York, from my home in New Jersey, and Benny Agbayani hitting a home run and banging on the roof of the car like Jeff Lebowski when he's listening to Creedence and having like a good day in the Big Lebowski. Like I was basically getting after it. That was as happy as I'd been as a fan. And I was like, damn, this might actually work. Because as good as the core of that team still was, there was a lot of just like janky Mets guys, like just like kind of like Benny Agbayani was like a 5'8" Hawaiian dude who like swung at everything. And like guys like that on the roster, like I loved them. Melvin Moore was another example of like they were producing guys that would go on to have good big league careers elsewhere.
Your Jay Paytons, your Timo Perez, like
Fernando Vina was a Met, Marco Scudero was a Met. They developed these guys and then they dumped them for nothing, which was classic Mets behavior.
I was also obsessed in 2000 with Joe McEwing. Like he was my exact type of baseball player.
Yep, little. I'm assuming. Were you like a short king at the time?
I was a short king, and I truly loved the short kings who, you know, they were gritty.
Yep. It was like he definitely was of that like type of baseball player that made up for his like manifest deficiencies skill wise by just always being super dirty. Like physically dirty, like covered like, in just
like a classic pig pen.
Doug Mickavich was like that too. His jersey was always dirty. It's a first inning. You're like, did you just like roll around in some dirt?
Practicing diving?
Like, no, I'm gritty.
Ground?
It's dirty. Yeah.
Oh, I love Doug Mickavich. I also loved when I like read the article about like his father. Like clearly his father was abusing him by making him swing a bat like 5,000 times at night before he could go to sleep. But like. As a kid, I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. Why doesn't my dad care?
If my dad cared about me, he would have taught me how to throw like a circle change or a fork ball. And he would have made it so that I could never be happy in my life.
I wish my dad was the guy from Whiplash.
Yeah,
Dogs. So the Mets lose the 2000 World Series in 5 games. And kind of go back to being okay to bad for most of the rest of the 2000s. What do you remember about the kind of the 2000s Mets? They had a lot of really good players. You know, they had the David Wright, Carlos Beltran. They had Johan Santana after his twin stint. It was awesome. DeGrom, Jose Reyes, you know, off-field issues there. A lot of star players, but they never really got back to anywhere until 2015. What can you remember about the 2000 to 2015 kind of that era of the Mets?
So I was really into the 2006 Mets team. That was an extremely good team. It was the only really good team, with the exception, I guess, of 2015, which was kind of a false dawn. The 2006 Mets was like the prototypical good Wilpon team. They did not win any. They lost the NLCS to a Cardinals team that won like 88 games all year and wound up winning the World Series. There's like 84 games or some crazy.
Cardinals pulled some lucky BS.
I know.
I don't remember that.
It sounds hard to believe.
Yeah.
But that 2016 was, again, it was like a lot of really good players, but then also in this Wilpon way, because they just were kind of like very hidebound and sort of like old fashioned. It was a very old team. Like it had David Wright and Jose Reyes were young, and then everybody else was like 31 years old. But I really thought they could win the World Series, and they had a lot of really cool moments that year. And that was also just like kind of felt like a fun time to be me. You know, it was like 28. I was not doing great, I wouldn't say, but but like didn't have like 4 roommates anymore. And then the Mets were winning. Like, it felt awesome. That was like the last time I was happy as a Mets fan, basically, until 2015.
Yeah, I mean, 2006 season, that was a magical year. I mean, it was so great. I mean, like the idea that we took a Brave and Tom Glavine was really great that year. And this is like the years after Mo Vaughn. Like I would always find like the guy that the Mets traded for go all in on like somebody like that. And Tom Glavine actually like kind of paid off. Yeah, I mean, Wessex Millage, Xavier Nady, Cliff Floyd,
Yeah,
like a great squad. 2007 is the only time I've ever cried at Shea Stadium.
really.
What happened?
I was at the last game. Me and my roommate Scott Rogowski.
Oh
We
wow.
went.
I was
Yeah,
just on a pod with Scott just not very long ago. That's cool. Like
HQ.
royalty. HQ
Yeah,
trivia Don Scott
HQ.
Rogowski.
Yeah, HQ Rogo. We were roommates living in Ridgewood, Queens,
Nice.
and we went to the last game. We got there in the second inning, and I remember he had a smartphone and he looked at it was like a Microsoft Queue, and the Mets were down 5-0 in the first inning,
Yeah.
and we're like, they got to come back because they've already. This is the season 2 where they were in first and they just kept losing to end
Yeah.
the season, and yeah, then that Coldplay song played, and we both cried.
What Coldplay song? The
The one where they say it's not supposed to be easy or
Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah.
Like a song that's like the attempt of like a really sentimental man to write the saddest breakup song possible. Only in this case, it's you breaking up with Tom Glavine because he gave up 7 runs and got 2 outs in the last game of the season.
To the Marlins.
Honestly, you were
48-year-old
right.
Tom
You were
Glavine.
100% in the right there.
Wow, emotional.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I cried at a Mets game, but I do remember having a super bad time at the series that they lost to the Cardinals at a very, very cold game that they lost because So Taguchi hit a home run. If you remember So
Oh,
Taguchi
man.
Oh,
at
yeah.
all.
yeah.
And I just remember my like girlfriend was there with me. I was there with a guy who ran like the first website I ever wrote for. I was like, this felt auspicious. And then it's like a very classic Mets feeling. Like after they lost, being, mad that they lost, physically uncomfortable because it was cold as fuck. And I was in like the top, like basically the last row of Shea Stadium. So there's just like some sort of like screen behind you, but otherwise the wind is hitting you. And I just felt stupid for expecting any other experience but that.
Mhm.
Like not just the pain of watching the team lose, but then also the additional bit of being like, you fucking fell for it, you lummox.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
what are you new? Like
You lummox.
That to me is maybe the most relatable thing I've ever heard. Like that feeling, the Mets are so great at creating that feeling of how did we tricked you again?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
just like the same trick too. It's always it's not like that was in any way a new experience. Like they were just sort of like, well, it's just a bunch of old guys whose bodies could fall apart at any time. But what if they don't? And somehow
You're right.
like,
We better trade for Mike Bordick just in case.
right, yeah. I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
like as long as Tom Glavine doesn't start pitching like a 38-year-old man, which he is.
He's thrown 260 innings for the last 30 years.
Yep.
But I think he's going to hit his stride in October.
God, he was 40. He wasn't even 38. I was doing him a favor. He was 40 years old that year.
Man. So 2015, kind of their last hurrah so far, and then we'll see what happens this year. They make the World Series again against randomly the Kansas City Royals, one of the most tortured fan bases of all time. And the Royals out of nowhere win. What do you remember about that series? Was it less painful to lose to the Royals than the Yankees, or more painful because you're like, who the hell is this team? This was really our shot.
I felt like the 2015 Mets were kind of a mirage. It was so exciting. Do not get me wrong. And I remember I was working at a late show and I was just like refreshing ESPN.com to see if they would get somebody at the trade deadline. And I was so happy that they got Cespedes. But like the playoffs felt magical. And then against the Royals just had a little bit more magic. Like they kept hitting these like really annoying bloop singles. Like
I remember that very specifically.
God damn, dude. Yes. So that's 100% correct. The thing with that 2015 team that was different than a lot of the really good teams that had come before was that like, and it was actually sort of similar to last year's team. They stunk for a lot of the season. Like the opening day lineup for that 2015 team was bad. Like John Mayberry Jr. was in it. Like they were not a team that should have competed. And then at some point in like August, I guess it was, and then they got Cespedes after things had started to sort of improve, and then he basically was the best baseball player alive for 2 straight months. But like young players were arriving ahead of schedule and pitching very well. That was DeGrom and Noah Syndergaard, and Matt Harvey was already there, Steven Matz. And then it was just like everything kind of was working. And yet, like, because it was, for the most part, give or take the fact that they fucking traded for Superman, at the deadline, it was like the same guys that I had watched be bad the previous couple of years. And a lot of those guys really did make some adjustments. It's the last time the Mets had a really good hitting coach. Kevin Long figured some shit out for Daniel Murphy, and Daniel Murphy played for 6 more years. He made all-star teams.
He was
won
awesome
batting
for a
title.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. But he had been like before that with the Mets, it was like a type of player that the Mets excelled at developing, which sounds like a compliment if you were not familiar with that type of player. It's like a guy that can play like 3 or 4 positions in the field worse than anyone you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And like doesn't have any standout offensive tool of any kind. And all of that was like, and then, during that, like really right up until he made an error, like a backbreaking error in the World Series, Murph was like the best player on the team for months.
I mean, in the NLDS and NLCS, it was a truly to me, I think it's so much more impressive than Carlos Beltran's like Astros run.
Yeah.
Like it felt
Carlos
like
Beltran was good already.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really felt like he was cheating. Like it didn't make sense. Like there's no other reason this could be happening.
Yeah, which was part of, I think, kind of the fun of it. So I was covering that series. I was working at Vice Sports at the time, one of the best ideas in the history of online media. Everyone agrees it was a perfect fit. And yet I did get a credential. So I covered the NLCS and the World Series, only the games in New York. They weren't that money was already being earmarked for Action Bronson and the couch that he would sit on and watch TV as part of their cable network. But I did get to go to those games, and I didn't think the Mets were going to win the World Series necessarily, but also it was weird enough that they were there. It was so surprising that they were there that at the time I was kind of like, I don't know, why not? Like, and I had friends that, were covering it too, that had also grown up as Mets fans. I remember like Howard Megdal saying to me, he's like, I think we're going to cover a World Series parade, man. Like, I think we're going to like be at one of those. And like at the time, everything that I'd seen, I mean, they beat a really good Cubs team that would win the World Series the next year in the DS. They beat the Dodgers. To get to the World Series, they looked utterly convincing. And I was like, well, I don't see any reason why not necessarily, except for, as Sean remembers, and this is how I remember it too, that the Royals were just always hitting the ball an inch and a half to the right or the left of whoever was nearest in the field.
It was insane because that was the first season my wife ever really watched of baseball. And to this day, like, she's just like, why don't more teams just do that?
Yeah. You don't have to hit it over the wall. Just hit it between the 2 guys. Yeah. I remember being so fucking stressed watching those games, not just as a fan, but I was in a press box and I hadn't done a lot of like traditional coverage of that kind. And I didn't really do a lot of traditional coverage of that kind for Vice. Like I didn't write gamers. I wrote like 2 big features, but I had to try to be normal. There were like real journalists there and I didn't know how to act necessarily. Like, so my whole thing was, I remember like the late Pedro Gomez of ESPN was like, he had been like stationed at the table next to me and he wasn't there for a lot of it. He was like, going around doing journalist stuff. And most of what I tried to do was just like, don't embarrass yourself in front of Pedro Gomez. Like he's on TV. He seems like a stand-up guy. Like don't accidentally cheer or curse in front of the guy whose work you admire from ESPN's baseball broadcast. And I did manage to do that, but I would go out, 1 inning per game. I would give myself like, I would get 1 beer and I would just fucking power walk around the stadium. And during the game, the game that they won at home in that World Series, they only won 1 game. I remember just like high-fiving strangers, like kids from like probably people that I would have really disliked in real life. Like I remember high-fiving a child in a Long Island varsity wrestling jacket. But like at that moment, me and that dude were just right on the same wavelength. Like
Oh, yeah.
good solid connection. Like we both meant it. It was great because like Juan Uribe had just driven somebody in. We're both we're never gonna die, brother.
Well, David, if you're ever really stressed at the Mets stadium, there's a way to relieve the tension that David Cohn had some ideas.
I did not have access. My credential did not get me access to the bullpens.
Do not jack off in front of Pedro Gomez.
Keep it together. One more half inning.
So, going through all of this, what is your overall kind of takeaway for Mets fandom? Like, why I feel like as an outsider looking at the Mets, I think I understand they've had some painful losses, but they've been a kind of mostly good competitive team relative to some other real crap ones who I won't name. Like, what is it about the Mets who are, relatively okay, if not like a banner franchise, that makes them such a punchline and so like just so much, the Mets, like
I feel like it's two-pronged. I feel like it's one, sharing a city with the Yankees.
Yeah.
And then two, when the Mets do lose, they lose in such humiliating fashion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they reliably, I would say that like you're right that on balance they don't lose that much more than other teams. I mean, they did, like the expansion, the 62 team was like historically the worst team in baseball for whatever 60 years. Can't take that away from them. But the Mets are really good at losing games in ways that other teams don't seem to lose them. And I don't think that that's just a function of like playing in New York, that like losing a game because like Luis Castillo drops a pop-up is like, I watch a lot of baseball, like it's not just for work either. Like it's fun for me. I've never seen that shit. I don't know if this makes sense. And this could be me being optimistic or deluded. I think I'm getting better at being a Mets fan. I think I've more or less figured out how to care about this team as much as I do, which is like probably as much as I ever have at this point, like really going back to when I was a kid. But I'm less helpless than I was. I think I just sort of understand that things are going to happen to them that are stupid. And sometimes they'll be good and more often they'll be bad. But like I can sort of find a way to like block it off. Like I think as stressed as I was during the last postseason run, I really was like grateful for all of it. It felt like 2015 again in the sense where I was like, this is stupid. This shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
But I was also just like, so enjoy it. And I think I was more or less able to enjoy it. By the time it ended, I was kind of like, all right, that's probably enough. Like it's time for bed.
Honestly, to me, last year, the best thing that could have happened, and that is the Dodgers blew them out in game one.
Yep.
And it really made me remember that they were not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And that they got to enjoy the games and like root for them.
Yeah. And they won a couple of weird games in there, but it was like very obvious because I think that was the bit in 2015 that was kind of like, and no disrespect to the Royals, that team had made the World Series the year before. Like it really was a very good team, but they didn't seem like they were that much better than the Mets to me. And I remember going into that series, the Mets had already beaten a couple of teams that I really did think were better than them. Just to get to the postseason, they had to beat the Braves, beat the Brewers, beat the Phillies. All of those teams during the regular season were better than the Mets for most of the year. And I knew when they got to the Dodgers, I was like, well, they're definitely not as good as these guys. Like, this is not really even terribly close. And then to be reminded right off the bat, like, no, you were right about that too. Actually, like this is, they shouldn't even really have to do this.
Nobody believed in us. And they were correct not to.
They were correct. Actually, they believed in us for a little while, and I think they had fun. And then they stopped believing in us, and they were right.
People believed in us for the correct amount of time and the exact correct amount, and we just proved them right, like pretty exactly. Yeah. Do you think part of that is getting older, getting married, having a kid, having different experiences in your life, and the Mets are still there, but they're not like crushing you like when you were, 13 or 25 or whatever?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think it's different, as a kid, it's like it's like the first place that you're putting all of the sort of care that you have. I mean, like I cared about my family. I guess I cared about doing my homework or whatever, but it was the first thing like outside of myself that I was like throwing myself into in that way.
Mm-hmm.
The version of myself that I like from carrying the way I did in like 2006, like I don't really remember that guy very well. I think I would probably like to hang out with him, but that was a long time ago. I'm different than that. Like, I don't know, Sean, do you miss like the version of you that's like crying to Coldplay in the parking lot after a Mets game with fucking HQ Rogo?
Yeah, I do not. I miss hanging out with Rogo.
Yeah.
It was nice to have a roommate that also liked the Mets. I'm thankful that I will never cry again at a baseball game. Although I do think if they win the World Series, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's going to happen.
Yeah. I think that I would love to be tested on that. Like, I didn't cry during the postseason last year, but I was weird. Like, I was doing like stress push-ups during games and stuff like that. And
Oh, I went to the first game in LA with my wife, and after we met up with a friend who's a Dodger fan for like at this like Japanese restaurant that just opened up over there, and he was like so happy that I had to point out like immediately that I'm like, well, you just moved to LA 2 years ago, so you're not really a Dodgers fan, and I don't think you're allowed to be this happy about this. And then Erin, my wife Erin, text messaged me. She's like, "You have to be normal."
Yeah.
I completely get that though. Because I've been around that where you're like rooting with a rival fan and then you start getting mad and then you're like, wait, you're not even a real fan. You know, you're like, if you're a lifelong Dodger fan, unload on me. That's fine. But like this, no, this doesn't count. Like you should feel bad. Yeah.
Right.
I think you're totally justified there.
That's also one of the things that comes with like getting older is that like you get more normal as a fan, but then also you get exacting in weird ways where you're sort of like, well, you don't even fucking remember Eric Karros. You sit at this table with me. You're gonna talk like someone who had a Raul Mondesi jersey when you didn't because you live someplace else. Like that's stupid. But that's like the sort of fandom that you can age into. It's like becoming that type of guy, a curmudgeon, I guess is basically what we're describing.
It's fun to have sports as this thing where you're like, now you're old and mature, you're like, okay, I'm like 98% normal. And then there's just, that little bit of you. It's like when my dog gets like a bone marrow thing and turns into a wolf for like 1 second. And you're like, oh my God. It's just like, I'm a pretty well-adjusted person. And then, it's like, fuck you. You don't remember this guy. You can't root for the,
Yeah. I was also like, I don't want to sell it like I figured anything out. Like when Francisco Lindor hit the home run that won them the first of the play-in games against the Braves, which was this crazy doubleheader that they had to win one. They won the first one. It was a very dramatic back and forth game. My wife was on a work call in the back of our apartment, and I said, "Oh my God, he did it!" loud enough that it was part of her Zoom call. It was discussed by the people that she works with. So like, this is the enlightened version of me, but it's still like basically like having a big dumb dog that could wreck your work meeting with its behavior.
Like, this is my voice all the time. I think I have total issues and I can't really go up or down. But Alonso's home run in Milwaukee last year, there was something guttural that came out of me.
Turned into the like got a light guy from Twin Peaks: The Return for just for a little bit, just for a little while, just drink deep, descend, but then it's right back at it after that. You're normal.
Well, we're about to close the big deal with the Japanese company. As long as nothing happens in the next 30 seconds. God damn it!
Yeah. I mean, this is probably true of every team. I think like there's something annoying about Mets fans as well that I should acknowledge, which is I think that there is a tendency to talk about being a Mets fan as if it's like having a curse on you, like some sort of, and it's not. It's like it's being a fan of a team. It's not in any way different than being a fan of any other team, except for the fact that you're doing it in New York. And also, as Sean mentioned, the fucking Yankees are like right over there doing Yankee stuff. But the aspect of it that is like sort of where you're dreaming on stuff in ways that you know is stupid and unlikely to work. That's always been part of being a fan. That's like meant a lot to me, is just sort of the possibility of what some player or some team could become. And the Mets have done a great job in my life of giving me stuff to kind of postulate idly about or like be over the top in my affection for. And I think that that's like that's a real adult skill as well. Like you got to be able to see the world that way or else you'll feel insane.
It's beautiful.
It is, isn't it? Isn't that great? I'm
That's
going to
great.
steer it back to Octavio Dotel, but we don't need to R.I.P. in peace to the king.
I'm sorry, I'm not talking right now. I'm listening to the Coldplay song off.
No,
It's really
nobody
it's really
said that it was
meaningful.
going to be easy, Dan.
That's our show for the week. Thanks again to Sean and David for joining, and a special shout out to Steve Menegazzi for designing the Thrill of Defeat logo. You can check out more of his stuff at stevenmenegazzi.com, MENEGOZZI. If you like the show, just tell people about it. Any Mets fans, any sports fans, anyone who loves the sound of my annoying voice, just spread the word. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll be back with an all-new show next week.